Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Paulymath Show. Now in this episode, I'm going to review Gary Vaynerchuk's new book, The Thank You Economy. Now before I dive into this, I just want to say that I am a big fan of Gary's. I have been ever since I first saw one of his videos on his one of his Wine Library TV videos. This guy just has so much passion for life and what he's doing online that I was instantly addicted to just watching the show. Now, I personally don't even drink wine, but I'm not really a big wine person, never have been. But when I watch his episode, it's like as soon as I finish watching his show, it's like I want to go to the liquor store and pick up a bottle of wine and give it a try. So, I always thought that was really cool that he can take, his passion is so contagious that even for a guy who's not into wine, he can kind of make him want to go and try that specific wine that he's reviewing on a show. So I could just imagine how effective what he's doing, how effective it is for people who actually do enjoy wine. So when he came out with this book called Crush It a few years back, I bought it, I read it, and I just absolutely loved it. It's an awesome book. It really helped me out with a few things. At the time, I wasn't really seeing the value in Twitter, and I was definitely not really looking at YouTube and making video content online as a big as big as a part of my strategy as I do now. So that's definitely Gary's influence. Just watching his videos and seeing what he does with Twitter has definitely helped me embrace those two things. And I still don't feel like I have fully. Video I'm embracing a lot more now, but Twitter I still feel like I have a lot to learn from him on that. And that was kind of what I was expecting from this book. I thought that the Thank You Economy would kind of pick up where Crush It left off and maybe teach some more in-depth information on how to do that. I bought this book, and that was kind of that's what I thought it was going to be about. And I just finished reading it today. I started reading a couple days ago, and this morning I just started reading through the whole thing. And after finishing it, I actually want to say that I wasn't very impressed with it. I kind of found it a bit dry, and I found it boring, to be honest with you guys. And I think the reason for that, I think there's two reasons for that. The first reason is I don't really think that I'm the target market for this book. It seems to me, after reading this book, that I think the target market for this is somebody who's like a CEO of a larger corporation, somebody who's running a bigger company, and so far they've been, they haven't been seeing the value in social media, or they haven't, or they've seen social media but they've given up on it, or maybe they tried a little bit and they don't really understand it, or they see the value in social media but they have no clue how to. Why they would want to implement it in their business. I think if I was that person, then I think I would get a lot more value out of this book. But as an entrepreneur who's not running a corporation with any employees or anything like that, I just didn't see the value in this. This book, Crush It. I love this book. I've recommended this book to so many people. I've read this thing probably 3 or 4 times now, and the energy in this book that I picked up was, it's like the energy I picked up from it was young entrepreneur trying to inspire other small young entrepreneurs to kind of go big. This book is more, felt like the energy is more like he's talking to people who are already big business owners and trying to tell them that, look, you need to kind of take a more smaller approach, a one-on-one approach of caring and dealing with customers one-on-one and learning how to utilize social media to listen to what people are saying instead of just always talking. So I think that's one of the reasons I didn't find this book interesting. It didn't really engage me. I read the whole thing because I was hoping that there'd be something in there for me, but I finished the book and I was a bit disappointed, and I think that's probably primarily the reason why. So I think if you're looking for the same, if you're like a blogger like me, or somebody who's just a one person, if you're not running a company and you like Crush It, just be aware of that, because you might not find the same kind of energy in this book. So I think that's one reason. So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a bad book. I think it's just a book that's written for a different target than myself. Having said that, I think there's also a second reason, and I think a part of it is that it feels to me like there's been a change in the energy that Gary has from this book to this one. I think, becoming as successful as he has been with what he's done, and he's been called up to talk to some of these huge companies, big corporations, and try to kind of show them the light of social media and carrying online and engaging people in conversations and things like that. I think being around those kind of people, the big companies, I think it's kind of worn down. I think it's kind of affected his energy, because here he was like, to me, when he, at this point in his life, I felt like the guy was, just completely on fire. Here it feels like he's been, through this big battle where he's had to defend himself and try to prove to these big companies that, look, you need to embrace social media. You need to listen to your customers. So everything that he talked about in here, I think, by the time I felt his energy in this book, it just felt like he's been through a war, of trying to convince people that in the corporate world who are just so stuck in their stubborn ways, and they're worrying about their shareholders, and they're worried about the legal issues of setting up a Twitter account and letting employees do Twitter campaigns and things like that. I've been in the corporate world, so I know what that energy feels like. I know what it feels like to be pulled back every single time you have a creative idea, to kind of get pulled back. And after a while, you just get worn out from being constantly pulled in that direction. So, and that's just being part of the corporate world, where he's more of a, he's brought in to talk to these big corporations and to, give talks and to kind of shine a light on how they can use social media to build their businesses and how to thrive in this new economy. So I think he's in a position where he's being challenged a lot more by these companies, and I think these companies are throwing everything they possibly can at them, because I don't think the big corporations want to embrace this type of thing. I don't think they're happy about the fact that the little guys, the bloggers, have so much power and people are talking on social media. I don't think that corporations at their core really want this to happen. They're just being forced to listen to it. So when Gary comes in to talk to them, I think there's this huge apprehension by them to kind of want to accept this, and I can tell that they're standoffish, and they're kind of like, okay, let's see what this guy has to say. Let's see if he can prove to us that this stuff is real, that it's gonna produce return on investment, that this is actually something that we should pursue. And that's really what this book feels like to me, is that it was basically like almost a book written almost on the defensive, where he's constantly just talking about facts of here's some proof that this stuff works, that you should engage, you should use Twitter and you should use Facebook and do online blogging and videos and stuff like that. It's like this whole book is trying to prove to some CEO of a big corporation that they should engage in this stuff. And for that type of person, for a CEO of a big company who's skeptical about social media and who's not really into that, I think this is a good book. But for me, I didn't find it that valuable, because I'm already sold on it. I already believe in this stuff. So to me, it's like, okay, great. But I was hoping that it would be more like this book, but part 2, let's dive into more depth on how to actually do this stuff, and some best practices and some of the little nitty-gritty stuff that he learned over the years. So I think that's the second thing, is that I think that besides me not being the perfect target for this, I also think that he has been worn down by the corporate world to kind of take a more conservative stance on what he's saying, and he didn't have that in this book. In Crush It, he was just on fire, and he was just like very aggressive, but I love that. That's the passion that I loved about him. And the funny thing is, in this book, is that he's got these little in between the chapters, within each chapter, he has these little side notes where you're reading through the book and he has this little side note. And the little side note things are awesome. It's almost like one version of him wrote the main book, and then like the real Gary Vaynerchuk wrote these little things. Like I could basically just erase everything else and just read the little parts. There's value in the little parts. Like every single one of them, I was reading through the book and I was just finding it really boring. And then I'd run across those little, snippets that he puts in between, and I'd read that part. I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. I really like that. So I learned more from the little snippets that he put in there than the rest of the book. And honestly, I don't know. There's something weird about the energy of this book for me. It doesn't align with the energy that he has in his videos on his blog, and I watch his I watch his videos on his site, and I follow him on Twitter, and I read what he says. Any videos that I find on YouTube and stuff of him, or anytime he does a talk and somebody has a link, I always make sure to watch it because everything he says is just awesome. But this book just didn't deliver for me what I thought it would. Take it as you will. Take that with a grain of salt, because I honestly don't know if I was a target market for this specific book. But there's something I learned from reading this book that was actually really, really interesting, and I think it shows why this guy is a genius. When I was reading this book, I was as I was reading it, I was actually on Twitter and I was playing with a new app that I installed, and as I was reading the book, I was sending out Twitter messages saying, I've gotten to chapter 3. And then I, after I read a couple more chapters, I sent another Twitter message. And when I finished the book, I sent out a Twitter message. I put a Twitter message out, and I said, I basically said, I don't think I was the target market for the thank you economy. Found it dry and boring. Crush It was way better. So essentially, I left what you consider, a negative comment on this book. And a few hours later, I was checking my Twitter account, and there was actually a message in there from Gary, and he replied saying, "Damn, I'm so sorry, man. Really?" And I'll post the 2 Twitter messages here in the video, so you guys can see what he wrote. Now, there's something really interesting about that, because first of all, he definitely walks the talk, right? Like, this book has sold, I don't know, probably a gazillion copies. So I'm sure there's a crap load of people on Twitter, messaging, talking about this book. And yet, in the midst of all those Twitter messages, he still goes in there and he's still listening. Like, he's obviously in there listening to what people are saying about his book, and he's going in there and replying and leaving comments. And the other thing that I really liked about what he said is that he didn't try to even defend himself. He just apologized. He just said he's sorry. Which I thought was really cool. So, what he did there with that, he saw the comment and he replied and he apologized. I learned more from that little transaction that happened there than I did from both of these books, because it showed me, it really proved to me the power of Twitter. Because as soon as I got that message from him, it totally made me feel like warm and fuzzy inside, like this guy actually cares. And, if he wrote another book tomorrow, would I buy it? Absolutely. Without a doubt. I wouldn't even think about it. It would just be like, yeah, sure, I'll buy it. Because I don't think that, I like his energy, I like what he says, and I just don't think that this was the proper book for me, specific at this point in time in my life, with what I'm doing with my online business. But for somebody else, this might be a great book. But when he publishes another book, I would definitely buy it. And I think that, watching what he did there with on Twitter is a classy move, and it proves that this stuff actually works. It proved to me that it really works, because his reply, it wasn't so much what he said. It showed me, it was like one of those lessons, because as soon as I read it, it triggered a feeling in my mind or in my heart. It was kind of like, wow, He actually cares. And he didn't even try to defend himself. He didn't, get on the defensive on it. He apologized and said, I'm sorry, man. So to me, that's almost like, where do you hear that in the corporate world? You never hear that. The only time you ever hear, if you ever go to any business, if you phone somebody, you phone some company, you have a problem, you have a complaint about something, they never apologize with that kind of sincerity. They always try to defend themselves, say, oh, sorry, it's not our fault, it's our policies, we'll try to fix it for you, but next time do this. It's almost like they're blaming you for the mistake. He didn't do that. And I think that there's a big lesson that businesses can learn from that. And it, never mind businesses, but even for me, I learned a huge lesson from that experience because of the emotional shift in my perspective after I receiving that Twitter message. So as soon as I got that, it kind of just made me realize, holy crap, this Twitter stuff, social media and all this stuff is huge. I mean, I'm already doing it with blogs and Twitter and Facebook or whatever, but I'm definitely not doing enough. I'm definitely not doing enough listening. I'm definitely not doing enough caring online to the level that somebody like him is doing. So I really like that part of it. So, hey there. What I want to do is, because I didn't really get, this book stays on my bookshelf because, like I said, I've read this a few times. I've lent this book out to a couple people as well. I've recommended it probably to dozens of people. This is an awesome book, but this is one of those books that I love the energy of, so it's staying on my shelf. I ain't giving this thing up. But I didn't really get a lot out of this book. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to find a better home for this. If somebody out there is kind of an entrepreneur, CEO, maybe of a slightly larger company, and you're looking at social media and you're trying to figure out a way to implement it into your company, or you're not sure if social media is a thing, if you're not sold on this whole Facebook, Twitter thing, you're not sold on the whole concept, and you think you can get some value out of this book, just leave your comments below. Just say that you'd like to get a copy of it. And what I'm going to do is, from anybody who says that they'd like to get a copy, I'll just do a random draw from the comments below this video on YouTube. So leave the comment on YouTube. I'll do a random draw and I'll send it out to you. I'll pay for the postage as well. So yeah, I'll just give this book out to somebody who might find more value from it. And maybe you guys can read it, and if you like it, maybe you can do a better review, because it's obviously, it's going to be targeting you probably better than it targeted me. So anyways, that's it, and I'll see you guys in the next video.